My name's Jeff St Laurent. This is the live Tuesday call, but this isn't just any Tuesday call. This is the 100th live Tuesday call. So I'm super excited for this. And it's funny, when I listen to some of my recordings, I always say like, oh, I'm super excited. But I am super excited. I'm super excited for what I do as I help coaches transition to a full-time business. I'm super excited for the people that call in and that listen to this call that's recorded. And today is something to celebrate. You know, there's 100 calls that I've recorded, and this will be the 100th call that I'm posting. I've actually done well over 100 calls, but for whatever reason, there's been calls that I haven't posted. I can't even remember why, but there's probably another 10 calls or so that just have gone by the wayside and haven't been posted for whatever reason. But this is the 100th call that I've been posting. So today I'm going to be talking about, you know, the journey to 100 calls, and it's really all about that consistency in our business, because that's really what is going to give us the results that we want to create. But like I said, before we get going, I do record all these calls, and they're in my university on my website, sellingcoaching.com. So check out the university. Well, there are, like I said, 100 calls there. Plus, there's a lot of other videos there as well, as I help coaches transition to a full-time business. So that is my goal of that has always been to be this like most valuable resource on the internet for coaches looking to transition, and also something that's very specific as well, not just general fluff and saying, hey, go for it and let me motivate you, but getting into the specifics of launching our full-time business. So with that being said, right on the homepage of sellingcoaching.com, I have a great resource for you as well, where you'll see me offering up my dog, which I, of course, not going to give you, but I have a great resource, the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. Great way to get going there as well. And that's also going to put you on my email community, so you can see how I use my email to stay in touch with my audience and communicate with them, which is something that you need to be able to do as well. And then also stay up to date and have some great, I just always give some great information in there as well. And then lastly, I have a great group program. If you're in a position where you're starting off, I would probably recommend one-on-one mentoring. If you're in a position there, you can always go to the Work With Me page. Just there's a fill out the form at the bottom if you want to talk a little bit more about that. But then if you feel like you're marketing yourself and you're getting some leads, I have a great group program called Live Sales Conversations, and you can check that out at livesalesconversations.com. So with all that stuff being said, now you feel a little bit familiar with what I have to offer you, and to give you some resources, etc. Today we're going to talk about the 100th call. We're going to talk about creating just unparalleled consistency in your business. And that's what this is all about. And, you know, as we do this 100th call today, you know, I was looking at it and saying like, all right, well, what is it that got me here? What is it that got me to a 100th call? And all it is by doing one call. And that's where it all starts. And some people, when I'm working with them, as you know, when they hire me as their mentor coach, and we're, you know, starting to set up maybe a weekly event for them, and they're launching their website, and they're thinking, well, they say to me, Jeff, do you think I should be having, you know, some content up there first? Do you think I should be doing some of this stuff to kind of get it going? And I'm like, no, just you start with one, right? That's where you start. Like back way whenever it was, I started with one, and then I did two, and now it's 100. And there'll be a point where we're closing in on 150 or 200th call. And how do you get there? It's, well, we're just one at a time. And it's duh, Jeff, right? But that's what I want. I need you to hear that message. You know, when we build our coaching business, it's a week at a time. I came from the fitness industry as well, and it's just like people looking to release weight or get in better shape. It's like, it's a workout at a time. And it doesn't ever stop. It's not like, oh, I'm going to lose this weight and then I'm going to just stop. Well, then you're just going to get right back where you were in no time. So it's just a consistent thing, and it doesn't ever end. And the same thing with your business. That's the perspective that I want to give you today, is it's a consistent thing that hopefully doesn't ever end. If you want to do this full time, it doesn't stop, does it? No, like I transitioned in 2004 from the fitness industry and started my full-time coaching business. And, you know, to date, I haven't stopped, and I don't plan on stopping. I don't want to have to find a job or do something different, because this is what I do. And so it's just one day at a time, 1 week at a time. And some days I have fantastically productive weeks. Some weeks I have fantastically non-productive weeks or days, and that's okay. And what I've learned over the years is when I said that's okay, yeah, it's okay, but we have to learn to accept that because we're not a robot. And even robots or machines for that matter, they break down. I was doing this big project this last month, and my computer, I pushed my computer quite a bit doing a lot of video and editing and things like that. And it crashed on me a handful of times, and it freaked me out, quite frankly, because I had a lot of work that I thought I was going to lose. But the point being said is even if we are a machine, machines break down and need to be repaired. So we're going to have fantastically productive weeks. So we're going to have fantastically non-productive weeks. But the point of it is how do we keep moving as we keep moving forward, at a day at a time. And we've got to have our vision in front of us of what we're doing each day. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But the reality is that this is the long haul. And you can't do a whole bunch of stuff in a short amount of time. You can be super productive, and it can feel that way. However, the work we're doing here is just a consistent piece. And I love the phrase, it's consistency over time. And you always hear me say that. People use that word, we've got to be consistent a lot. But it's consistent over time. And when I say time, I always say years. I want you to have the years mentality. I just spoke with a potential client today, and they came to me. They're like, I really want to do this. I want to quit my corporate job. And they said that, they want to do it within the next year. And I said, fantastic. And doesn't mean people can't do that. What I want you to get into the mindset that is, even if you can move forward and quit your job and replace your income, just recognize it's going to be years before you really start to get into a zone and to really start to figure out kind of that groove for yourself and figure out your way. And that consistent work comes like over time, but the consistency really allows you to consistently do your activities so you can sustain your income. Because with entrepreneurship, the thing that we've got to be aware of is that if we're not consistent, really where that comes into, where it affects us the most is from an income standpoint. And let me break this down a little bit here, and I'll get into some more specifics and to say is, how do we get to the 100 calls? We'll use that today as the metaphor. It's the 100 calls, metaphorically, I'll say, what does that mean to you, right? It could be your first week of something, your fifth week of something, and that's where we start off with, is what's the first week I'm doing something? And let's find an activity that's not all the activities, but what's one activity that I can start with that's most relevant for me with where I am in my business. This is what I want you to be thinking. That's where, based on where I'm at with my business, where is the most relevant activity that I can start doing this week? And maybe it's a weekly activity. It's a daily activity. I don't know what it is. We can figure that out in a second. But what can I start to begin so I can then on week 2 go, wow, this is my second week doing this. And this is my third week doing this. Part of it for me when I do my live calls is it's just the more I do it, the more excited I get about it, the more consistent I get about it, the more it builds upon it. And okay, wow, I did 100. Like, okay, baby, bring on 125, bring on 150, bring on 200. It breeds something of itself, because when someone goes to your website, like when you go to sellingcoaching.com and you go to the university and you see call number 100, you're like, I don't know what you think, right? But if I would go there, like, wow, this person's doing something, right? They're doing something, and that's what I want you to do is do that something, but then do it again the next week, and then the next week, and don't try and add in a whole bunch of stuff. Do that one thing, and then let's get that down so it's a habit where you just can't break it. Meaning, my Tuesday call is a habit. My whole schedule revolves around it. Like even on a vacation, it's like, oh geez, if I go on a vacation, I'm thinking, well, what am I doing with my Tuesday call? Either have that call or I don't have the call. And there's been a few times in the last year, it's just been once out of the year, other than like a major holiday or something like that, where I didn't do my call because I went away to Florida for the week with the family, and so that's cool. But you've got to get it to the point where it becomes such a part of your world, just like, let's say, working out, just like spending time with a loved one. Hopefully those things, if you don't have that consistency, they're not going to amount to anything, because it's consistency over time. And so let's start to take a look at that. Those that are students of mine, you might have heard me talk about the 4 different types of activities that we have in our business. If we were to break down those activities, and I'll say that real quick in saying that we've got our marketing activities, those activities which get us out in front of people. It's our message. If we're doing something online, audio, written, verbal, doing calls like this as an example, right? That's me getting out into the world. That's speaking my message. This is a form of marketing. I call it education-based marketing. And this is how we educate, at least I believe how we should be educating in our type of business as coaches, is we educate people. And then, of course, we've got to figure out who we're educating and what we're helping them with. That's our headline there. But from that being said, that's our marketing activities. Then next type of activities of the 4 would be our follow-up activities. And those activities where we now begin to follow up with all of the interaction we're getting from our marketing activities. And those first 2 activities, those would be our primary activities that we have during our week. There are primary, there are priorities as well. And then that leads me to the third of 4 activities that we have in our schedule would be our client activities. And those would be when I have a client or any client-related follow-up and or servicing our clients. But then the last activities would be our administrative or admin activities. And that would represent least of our time. But a lot of time, coaches will spend time, or the majority of their time, doing admin activities, like the behind-the-scenes stuff, website or things like that. Or even a lot of people often mistake personal development, whether it's business development, a call like this would be, I'd say, business development. But this is not in your business hours. This is not an admin activity or anything like that. This is like something outside of your hours. This doesn't count towards your business hours. So when we start to take a look at how do we start to develop this type of unparalleled consistency so you can get to your metaphorical 100th call, or literal 100th call, if you will, we've first got to take a look at, okay, we got these 4 activities, but then we've got to schedule these 4 activities into our day. And that's where we've got to come up with our business hours and schedule those business hours. I always love saying that we want to treat our business like a job, in the sense that just with a job, you have set hours. If I work 9 to 5, I show up at 9 and I leave at 5. It gives me those deadlines to know when I need to show up and also when I can leave. And we need to do the same for our business. We need to come up with those hours. And these are all the things that I've done for myself. These are the things that I teach. But why I love doing what I do so much, and I always, like I said at the beginning today, as I get so excited and pumped up for the Tuesday calls, is because what I get to teach is the stuff that I've done and that I'm doing currently that also have worked for me very well. And I've started to see work for the clients that when they hire me as their mentor coach, whether it's a group or one-on-one, I'm starting to see that as I've been working with people more over time now, I'm starting to see it pay off and work for them. So I know it works, not even beyond myself, and I still currently do this. So that's why I'm so passionate and excited about sharing this stuff with you. It's not just oh, hey, check this out. Here's what I think works. It's like, here's what's working, and I'm still doing because it's thriving and it's working. So it's set those business hours, and it doesn't matter the volume of hours. It doesn't mean, oh, I need to have 8 hours. So if you're thinking, oh, I have a full-time job and I've got 3 kids and I've got, fill in the blank. We've always got those responsibilities. The cool part is entrepreneurship, unlike a job, as an entrepreneur, we get paid for results. Whereas with a job, you get paid for time. So if I work 9 to 5, maybe you're on salary, or maybe you get paid hourly, whatever it is, but you're just getting paid for time, whatever that position's worth. But as an entrepreneur, if I stay in my office longer, it doesn't mean I'm getting paid more. If I'm doing activities that produce a result, then great. But we have to remember we get paid for results. So the volume of time doesn't matter. What you need to do is you need to really make sure, what hours can I start to put in? And let's start to take up those 4 activities. And if we're doing those activities, we can start to take a look at the results that we achieve from that. And if they're accumulating or resulting in a favorable result, like, wow, this is exactly what I need or what I want, then great. If they're not, we say, okay, do we need more hours, or do we need to just get better at what we're doing within those hours? So that's where we want to start to come from. But if we're going to start to create consistency, we've got to say, okay, what are my business hours? And then I've got to be able to say, all right, well, what are my activities within those business hours? So if today I have, let's say, 2 hours, whether they're consecutive hours or hours that are split up, I don't care if it's a 2 or 1 hour blocks or 4 15-minute blocks, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you can do is it's a matter of starting off. If you can do something, obviously the more you start to create and create more momentum, yeah, you're going to need more time in a row or continuous time. But that's going to start to be dictated by what happens with what you're doing with whatever consistency to start off with. So, hey, you got 4 15-minute blocks. Great. What are you doing in those 4 15-minute blocks? And like I said, if you go back to those 4 activities, what I really want to see from you is those first 2 activities. And if you're really starting off, we talk about, of all the activities, what you're going to have in the beginning, you're going to have primarily marketing activities and admin activities, because you probably don't have any clients, so you don't have any really client activities. You don't have any leads or people that you're interacting with necessarily just yet, so you probably don't have any of those activities yet. We probably got a lot of, if you will, back-end stuff like, oh, I've got to create my website, or I've got to create my free offer, or maybe some of those types of things, or what you've been fooling yourself with into being business activities like, oh, I want to develop myself. And I'm not saying don't do that. Obviously, do that. That's why I'm here and I do this stuff for you. However, just don't fool yourself that that's during your business hours. But that's why we typically have admin activities and then hopefully marketing activities. And the marketing activities typically where people get confused on what to do, therefore, or they're scared or they don't know what to talk about, so they don't do the marketing activities, and that leaves them kind of just behind the scenes doing stuff that's never really going to get them anywhere. So what I'm saying for you is initially, with whatever time blocks you have set aside for your business hours, start looking at those marketing activities. And let's just take this call as an example, since we're celebrating the 100th call today, and looking at to create this consistency is if you're just going to do one thing a week, like I do my live Tuesday call every week. That's it. That's all I do in terms of that marketing. Now, I've got a whole system around that, and I work that in with my mentoring clients. When they hire me, I help them create what I call that weekly live event. And from that stems a complete social media marketing plan, which is if you want to be doing marketing online, but also it creates a weekly email marketing plan as well, so we can use that. And so that's where we can create and stem from that. But for right now, to backing it off for you to say, like, well, what's that one thing you can do this week, and then when can you do it, and can you do it on a weekly basis? And maybe it's a call, maybe it's a Facebook Live, maybe you interview someone. There's lots of things that you can do there. But I would say is pick that something, that one thing, and give it a date and a time, or a day and a time rather. Give it a home. I like to say it's not done until it has a home in your calendar. If it's on a to-do list, that's one thing. But the reason why to-do lists never get done is because they never find a spot in your calendar. And so when I've got a to-do is like when I'm finished this call, I've got a call at 1:30, so I got 30 minutes between the end of this call and my next client. But in that little gap in my calendar, it's right in front of me right now, I've got 5 different bullet points of things I've got to do. And that's where those otherwise would be to-dos. But now they're going to get done because they've got a home. So as soon as I hang this call up, if I didn't have anything in my calendar, well, there's no boss looking over my shoulder going, hey, all right, dude, you got to keep working. You can't just go chill outside right now. You've got to go do some work, right? But if I don't have anything in my calendar, guess what? All right, I've been working this morning and I'm a little tired, or I need some food, and I got to let the dog out, and geez, the sun's out. And it's like, oh, I want to sit outside for 5 minutes. And yeah, that would be nice, but I'm at work. And I'm sharing this with you is like, yeah, I can do that. And sometimes I do that because I'm wiped. And maybe I'll have something in my calendar, my bullet points. And I'm like, you know what? Screw those bullet points. I'm going to go sit in the sun for 10 minutes, or who knows, maybe even longer. What I'm saying is that I want you to develop the mentality that I have, is that it doesn't mean I don't ever do that. And that's the benefit of being an entrepreneur. However, I've got to create that discipline, and that schedule then becomes my boss, because it's telling me, hey, when I hang up this call, I got to invoice this client, I've got to post this other call, I've got to do these 3 other things that are bullet pointed on there, and that guides me. So I hang up the phone, and guess what? What's next is right in front of me. And because I've got a time crunch between then and my next client, I got 30 minutes, guess what? I'm going to be a lot more productive in that time, whereas normally that stuff might take me, it could take me an hour to get done, it could take me longer. But it's in that 30 minutes, and then I've scheduled through the rest of the day when I go get my son. So the point is, I'm sharing these details with you is because that I know that I don't have any other time unless it's going to cut into my personal time, which that's not an option, because I'm leaving work at a certain time based on my business hours. So I get that stuff done, And that's where I can create that discipline from. So you can see I'm starting to pull it together a little bit here as I start to create my business hours. So I know when I need to be in work, and I know when I can leave work. And the benefit of that is that now I have my boundaries set up. So now I know, okay, before that, I can work out. I drop my son off at school or whatever, and then I can go work out, come back and shower, and then be in my office for this time. But then when I'm done, I make plans in my personal life, and maybe it's just relaxing, or I've got stuff to do, or I got to go grocery shopping, or all the other things that we do as just human beings. Well, now I know when I can do that stuff. And I don't compromise that because I've got to get my work done within my work hours. And of course, as you start to expand your hours, you might recognize that, wow, you know what? Maybe you're only working with a couple hours to start with on a daily basis or every other day. You might start to find sooner or later, if you're really doing the work, that you need more business hours. So you might need to expand those business hours. So you need to start to recognize that. However, you need to know when you're done. And so I want to pull that together as how you get your business hours, so you know when you come in and when you leave, but then what's going on within those hours. But for you, I want you to start going back to where I was starting with this whole thing, was to say, start scheduling in there some of those marketing hours. So what's that one thing? And I would just say, let's do some type of weekly education. And let's just, to start off, just pick something that you're good at. So if you're fine making videos, great, make a video. If you could do a recording like this, whether it's something live or something that you kind of record on your own, great. If you're like, oh, I love to write, then write. Publish a big article every week. And heck, if you're that much of a writer and you can write and it turns out to be, a couple pages, consider breaking it up into maybe 3 or 4 different parts, if you will, or sections, to be continued or more to come tomorrow. And just use them as posts, use them as emails to send to your audience, even if it's just friends and family right now, meaning your email list. And you break that writing into 4 different posts or 4 different emails. So that one article that you write, let's say on a Sunday night or whatever in your business hours, then becomes your weekly content for the week, and you start building an audience around that. So there's lots of ways that you can do it, and you can thrive off of ways that you work the best. You don't have to do a weekly call like I do, have an hour blocked off. I do this because it's what I've seen through my mentor and what I've learned, and it's also how I work most effectively, because I can't sit down and I can't write. I would be there for an hour, like for these calls. I need to come up with a call topic on Monday. I need to put it out there, and Tuesday shows up, and the fact that people are on the call, it's enough stimulation for me to focus and get out great information. I can't sit there and bullet point it out and write it out. That's just not me. So I like to have you thrive off of maybe whatever it is that how you work the best to get that out there. So that's why I want to start to get you out there in terms of looking at activities, get your schedule in there, but how can you start getting some of that marketing activities out there and doing that? And let's say you're doing nothing else. And like, oh, but Jeff, how can I do that? I don't have a website yet, or I don't have, you fill in the blank because maybe you're starting off and you don't quite know where to go. You might have heard me, if you're a student of mine, talk about when we're starting off, it's not about a business name. It's about your headline. As I say, helping who with what specifically? Who do we help and what do we help them with specifically? Myself, I help coaches transition to a full-time business. Obviously, when we start off, coaches are like, oh, I'm helping everybody with everything. Well, great. You're not going to get much traction, especially if you're doing it online, because you need to stand out. People need to know if this is for them or not in order for them to start taking action, or to buy you a little bit more time to scroll down or peruse more or learn more about you, or even subscribe. So when it comes to that matter, is to start taking a look at that to start to determine that. But if you're not there yet, or you can't get there, I'd still recommend doing some type of weekly content, like I just mentioned. Because as we start to talk more, we're going to start to figure out our message. And if we can't figure it out, other people are going to figure it out for us, because we're going to start to develop some fans. When I started off in 2004, I didn't really know what my message was. I heard the same thing that I'm telling you in a lot of ways, very differently than I teach it now. However, I heard, I've got to come up with a niche. And I'm like, all right, what the heck's a niche? And okay, I know logistically or logically why I need it, why I should have it, but I still can't come up with it. And I still couldn't commit to whatever I came up with, even though it wasn't very specific at all. God, I felt too narrow, or all the reasons why coaches would have challenges getting there. But what I did is what I'd recommend to you is, even if you can't get there, then start speaking. 'Cause that's what I did. I started speaking, and when people were hiring me, I was still growing my audience. I was still getting paid. I was getting paid well because I was speaking. I was getting out in front of people. And what I realized was, it's like, all right, even though I didn't know who I was targeting specifically, I was getting out there, and whoever I was in front of, it seemed to be working, so it worked. And then eventually it came to me. And really, when I say it came to me, I mean, when I started off in 2004, it took good 12 years before it really came to me. And the most specific I've been with my headline, if you will, is helping coaches transition to a full-time business. Because before this, I didn't have that. I didn't have a specific of a niche, if you will. But I did very well with it. That's why I've been on both sides. You know, I've been on the side of having a very well-defined niche like I have right now, and I've been on the side of not having one at all. So I know both work, but obviously having done both, that's why I always teach, let's get specific, because having one and having not had one, it's a big difference. And mostly I'll just say from an anxiety standpoint, because now I know where my clients can come from. I know how to find my clients. I have a whole structure around my business, whereas before it was just, I just get out there and I spoke. And I didn't really recognize the systems and the things that I was doing until I started teaching it. You know, and then I've also had that completely virtual platform, meaning right now I never leave my home. Sometimes it's not good, but but the point is I never leave my home. It's a completely virtual business, and I market virtually, and I do all my clients virtually and all my communications virtually, which is great. But I've also had it where everything was face to face. I was always doing live events, face to face seminars, traveling, U.S. mostly, but I've done some international trips as well, Canada, Japan, things like that. So I've done both of those models as well. And so there's no right or wrong, but it's a matter of figuring out, going back to that schedule, knowing who you're going after, but more specifically starting to get some of that information out there. So I want to be two things today. I want to be specific in terms of, hey, let's get our schedule down of our business hours. Let's start taking a look at these 4 types of activities that I've given you already. And, depending on where you are, starting to put them in there and starting to prioritize from them. But also, I want to be a little bit general in the sense that, hey, because I can't give you all the specifics on how to do all that stuff. That's where, mentoring with me or things like that, if you're in that position, I can dive in a lot more specific with that. But I could be a little bit general to say, like, well, if you're not quite sure where some of those things are quite yet, the best thing you could do is start speaking. And again, that's going to start to allow you to see your message a little bit clearer. Or like I said earlier, is that if you don't see it, then people are going to start to see it in you. And what allowed me to get more specific when I was in that, if you will, general space and just speaking, was I was starting to understand, if anything, why people were attracted to my message, why people were hiring me. What was it within my message that people were hiring me for? And that allowed me to start to put it better into words. And even if it was just for when I was speaking with that education, those types of things just gave me more of that confidence. And that's where I'll kind of start to wrap up a little bit here is that in the beginning, we can have confidence, but sometimes it can be challenging to feel confident in what we're doing because we haven't done it before. And that's where today, as you start your journey off or continue on with your journey, because I'll tell you, even if I know we got some people on the call and people that will be listening to this that are well into their journey. And with entrepreneurship, the more you do things, just like anything in life, the more confident you can get at them. However, still recognize, though, even though you're 2, 5, 15 years, whatever into your journey, there are times where you just don't feel confident. You feel like nothing's working. And you don't know what you're doing anymore. There's always have those moments. Every now and then I still have those moments. They don't last very long at all like they used to, because I have now a lot more proof. I go back to and I ground myself in what I'm doing in my schedule and the mechanics of what I'm doing and the evidence that I've created and presented for myself. But in the beginning, we don't have that evidence, right? We don't have the consistency to look back upon all the things that we've done to say, all right, well, this is what I've done and it's always worked, so keep doing it, when in doubt, because the thing is we can't predict results. We can't, I'm going to get 5 clients this month. Well, how can you predict that? You could get 15, you could get none. You just get what you can predict is the activities you're doing within your business hours and the consistency of those. And then month after month, all you can see is what results have those produced, like I said earlier. And if they're producing results that work for you, great. If not, then we've got to go back to, like I said, we got to get better, or we got to add more hours, or we're kind of refine what we're doing within our hours. But we can't predict results. That's why oftentimes early off coaches, when they come to me, they'll say, oh, I want to quit my job within this certain amount of time, and I want to, I'll get a certain amount of clients or grow my audience to a certain number. And I'm like, that's great. That's fantastic. But we can't predict those things. I can't predict how many people are going to be attracted to my message and therefore subscribe to my audience this week. All I can do is just continue on with my path. And then over time, I can start to see, well, okay, it seems on average, I'm getting, let's say, 8 to 10 people a week onto my email list through my marketing efforts. That's either going to be satisfying for me or not. And if it's not, then I go, what am I going to do to amp that up? And then I got to see the results that come from that. But that's what we can do, is we've got to start, banking on those activities that we're doing and the consistency of those and seeing the results we create. And that's what I want you to look for a little bit more now, is hopefully that has helped shift your thoughts a little bit, or your thinking a little bit, because now you can base your stuff on more black and white items. And that's a big thing, is those black and white items, things that you can predict. And whereas on the other side, if you're trying to schedule everything based on specific results, that's when we can get deflated, and that's where that confidence starts to go away, and that's when we start to doubt what we're doing. Whereas we can look at, okay, I've created a system, or creating a system from some of the things that I talked to you today, or like I said, when I work with my clients, that's what I do, is I help them create that system and that structure for themselves, because they start to know what they're doing and they can feel confident within that structure. And all they got to do is they've got to start to trust the structure, and as long as they're contributing every week and following the structure, they're trusting that it's going to work. And then when it starts to work and they see signs, then they've got to start getting better at, okay, now let's talk into those leads. Like I talked earlier about, that's why I have that live sales conversations, like livesalesconversations.com, that group program that I offer there, helping clients convert their leads into paying clients. Because, okay, now that I'm working the system, now I'm getting these leads. Oh, God, how do I do this? What do I say when I have to follow up? So with those types of things, that's where you're starting to learn more of those skills that you need, like the selling skill set as an example. However, that you get confident within that, and you trust your schedule, you trust your system, and you're starting to see it pull up. And then that brings up a new skill set that we need to learn. And then when you start to work at that, and then what happens is you start to trust yourself in terms of the skill set. And that's where, as I wrap this up, I'll say you get to the consistency where you get to trust yourself in that, okay, I know if I can continually do this system and work my weekly call and get it out there and keep consistent with my emails and interacting with these people, and then find the leads and then create those conversations and convert them, now I can be consistent as that. Well, as long as I keep doing that, and as long as I keep getting in front of people, there are going to be people that are going to come to me. And as long as I now keep doing the sales conversations that I have with them and converting them to clients, I know I can have a sustainable business. And I know that I can have consistency, but consistency of income. And that's the biggest thing, is the consistency of income. And that's what I want you to create. And that doesn't come in a short amount of time. I don't care what anyone else tells you, it does not come within a short amount of time. I'm not going to label what short is. I'm not saying you can't create fantastic results in a short amount of time, but what I will say is it would be very hard pressed to create fantastic, consistent results. That's would be the difference. You could do a big launch and whatever, and then all of a sudden do $10,000 in a month. Can you do $10,000 the next month, and the next month, and the next month, and the next month, and then every month consistently 10 years, 15 years later? That's the difference. That's what I want to create for you, and that's what takes time. And so great, have the big months, but don't be fooled by that. Woo, look at that. That's fantastic, because guess what? The next month's in front of you, and you're starting from zero the next month. And that's the reality of where we're going, and that's where we take it a call at a time, and then you're at 100 and you're at 200. And the same thing what you're doing is you start off with your audience and you've got nobody, or you got your friends and family and you've got whatever, 50, 100, 150 people. And then you're growing, a handful of people at best, maybe a week, and it feels slow. But the great part is that week turns into a month, turns into a year, turns into 10. And if you're doing it every week, guess what? That 5, 10 years later, you're going to be pretty happy with what you've got.